In this ongoing trade war with the United States, we're taking a look this morning at how we can shore up our cloud infrastructure. So joining us with more is technology critic Paris Marx. Great to have you on the show.
Great to join you.
So what are some of the vulnerabilities Canadians could face uploading so much data to U.S.-owned cloud companies?
Yeah, so there's a number of things, right? And I would say the biggest is that the U.S. has this law basically called the Cloud Act that was passed in 2018 that allows the U.S. government to access any data that is stored in servers that are owned by U.S. companies. And a Microsoft executive recently admitted in front of the French Parliament that effectively if the U.S. asked for this data, they couldn't say no to it. So this proves to be a real vulnerability, especially when the government is storing things in those clouds as well.
It's also interesting when you get into information sharing, and we don't talk about this a lot, but when NAFTA was renegotiated into CUSMA, which is what we call it here in Canada, that also allowed for access between two countries to shared information, which I don't think a lot of people realize. We focus a lot on tariffs and trade, but your digital properties is also up for negotiation.
Yeah, definitely. The U.S. government has been really effective in using these trade deals in order to basically get concessions that are good for its tech companies, right? To try to limit the regulations that can be applied to them and to give them things that they think are going to be favorable. And of course, I guess at a moment when that was being negotiated, it didn't seem like such a big deal. But now that, we're facing this trade war from the United States, we're facing this pressure from U.S. tech companies to try to roll back the regulations that we do have. It's certainly something to be reconsidering, right?
Yeah, and pressure, which is what we're feeling here in Canada from some of those tech companies as we try to put in some policies and some barriers. Listen, U.S. tech giants like Google and Meta are developed and entrenched companies. We've got nearly 300 data centers right across our country, some of which are Canadian-owned. So what would it take to leverage the Canadian ones more effectively?
Yeah, there are many things that can be done, right? Companies that are in Canada can look at actually trying to use those instead of, using Amazon servers or Google servers or Microsoft servers, for example. But like you were saying, the government also contracts with cloud companies in order to get access to the computing power it needs. It has some data centers of its own. It could obviously look at, contracting more with Canadian companies, which is something that Mark Carney suggested doing. But one of the things that I argue is that, if the government actually needs this kind of capacity, it should look at actually building out more data centers of its own to serve its needs, right, and to serve Canadians.
If we look back, as the internet went public, it was left largely up to the private sector to develop. So if Canada further develops its own cloud infrastructure, you want to see a version that's different from what most of us use right now. So what would that look like?
Yeah, I think it's really about thinking about, in the 90s when this was happening, the idea in government was that more and more should be left to the private sector. And that really shaped the approach that we have to the internet today. And I think that there's an opportunity now, not just to think about building out a public cloud, right, that is not shaped by the need to deliver profits to shareholders, but by thinking about what's best for the public good. And then that could potentially be a platform, a jumping off point to think about what, services developed in the, for the social benefit, for broader people, if we think about, the public services that we have, instead of just having everything shaped, as much as possible by the need to return shareholder value. And that could potentially lead to, different ways of developing platforms and services that maybe, would deliver some benefits.
Prime Minister Mark Carney pledged to review the federal government's cloud computing contract that shortlisted 4 American companies. Since taking office, do we know what action has been taken on this file?
No, I haven't heard an update on that. Maybe there has been one that I've missed. But, certainly the government has been active on the tech file. I would say not necessarily in the way that I would like. We saw the rollback of the digital services tax. We see the AI minister talking about not doing as much regulation on AI. So it's certainly been trying to appeal more, I think, to the tech companies, even as, we're trying to negotiate this new relationship with the United States.
Tech critic Paris Marx, great to have you on the show this morning. Thank you.
Thanks so much.